Rohan Sheth, founder of a company called GrowRev.
Client list includes Fortune 500 CEOs, A-list celebs.
In a digital world, when you're in a physical business, and our next guest can certainly help you.
The reason I decided to start this series is to share behind the scenes of what it's like to build a true digital business. Being a digital entrepreneur is what I've built my entire career in, whether it's from the affiliate side to the agency to the technology businesses to the coaching and consulting businesses, and I want to show you everything. The series is going to be very, very focused around what it's actually like to build a real digital business. The good, the bad, the ugly, the degenerate. I know there's a lot of people that just say, you can go work on the beach and sleep 6 hours during the day and work for 3 hours in the evening and be that business. But if you really want to build 7 or an 8 or a 9-figure company, it's a very different lifestyle. And it's maybe for some, it may not be for some. And I kind of want to share every piece of it. Two of the things that I believe in is education and entertainment. So it's gonna be heavily educational because you guys are gonna see exactly what my day looks like. That's gonna be extremely educational. Some of the stuff may be very mundane, very boring, me being on a sales call, me being on a team call, because anytime you build a business, my number one goal in life is I want to have fun. If I'm not having fun, especially for me on a day-to-day basis, I don't want to build a business, and I want to share that with you. So when whatever business you build, offline or online, you can really have fun doing both sides. Part of the digital marketing industry, with any industry at a whole, there's good and there's bad. There's balancing the both sides. Over the last few years, it's kind of got a cliche term of, kind of being looked at as a scam or being looked at as like a get-rich-quick scheme. Can businesses in the digital marketing space make you a lot of money? Yes. Can you build an amazing lifestyle out of it? Yes. The drawbacks of that entire situation and the cliche terms have also ruined the industry. It's made it look like it's really bad. Now you can build a digital business outside of those markets, but they serve a bigger purpose. Whether it's the information, whether it's the coaching, whether it's the consulting, it doesn't matter. They all serve a much bigger purpose. And I want to show you the other side of what it can do, the network you can get, the people that you get to meet, the difference that you get to make, the masses that you get to touch from just starting one business, one idea, and scaling that into something that's absolutely massive. And I'm fortunate to be in a position to be able to share that with each and every single one of you. A lot of the channels in our industry is very focused on how-to videos and the what-to-do videos and the top 5 things to do videos. And those are great. And I want you to use those because those are going to come in handy when you need to really implement on the day-to-day life. The difference between those videos to what I'm going to be sharing with you is legitimately doing that and showing you how I do that and what I do and what I say and how I say things. And I want to bring theory and practicality both together so you guys can take what you learn from the other channels and see it being done on a day-to-day basis and actually understand what it looks like for you to actually implement that. I've got a few different personal favorite creators and YouTubers that I enjoy watching. One, because also comes down to understanding values, and I'm going to be talking about values a lot throughout the entire series. Some of my values are learning, traveling, and lifestyle. And kind of if you look at some of those, business specifically being my number one value. But from the YouTube creator standpoint, some of the ones that I really like to enjoy, I like the Impulsive podcast with Logan Paul. I think he's done a phenomenal job at rebounding from his brand and what happened to him prior to, and kind of sharing the real, true, mature version of him because he's building a real business behind the scenes that most people don't see. The other one that I like, they're local to us in BC, is Daily Driven Exotics. Damon actually came from the internet marketing industry, built in the affiliate marketing world. We've got friends that are in common and built an entire audience around YouTube and kind of sharing his purpose and passion with cars. I really like the way they tell the story of cars and kind of having that fun kind of enjoyment because they are building a real business with the platform of YouTube and cars together. And one recently that I've kind of taken up over the last probably couple of months would be the Timepiece Gentleman and Anthony and the team there because of what they're doing with watches, because I've kind of had a bit of an itch with watches and understand that I started to like on the investment side. And all of them kind of encapsulate one thing is investments and long-term thinking. And that's a lot of my core foundation that I've ever built anything on is investing for your long term. Most people look at them as fun and kind of lifestyle, but it's like if you understand how to leverage both together, make money with something, buy into something that's going to make you more money in the long term, at the end of the day, why not do it? It's balancing both sides, that altruistic and narcissistic side of, making that money, using it to kind of feed yourself and kind of have fun at the same time, but also buying things that aren't just going to depreciate in value, but actually going to appreciate in value. Now that's an investment. Now, there's other channels that do a phenomenal job on real estate and stocks, and those guys can kind of school me on that all day long. But when it comes to how to build a real digital entrepreneur business, that's kind of what I'm here to do. Now, before we jump into this series and share with you everything that I've already talked about, what I want to do is I want to introduce myself to you, the audience. My name is Rohan Sheth.
Rohan Sheth, founder of a company called GrowRev.
Client list includes Fortune 500 CEOs, A-list celebs.
In a digital world when you're in a physical business, and our next guest can certainly help you with that.
I was fortunate enough to get into the digital marketing era at a pretty young age after coming from a direct sales background and then transitioning into the direct response marketing. I started GrowRev just over 6 years ago with the intention for me to be out there helping business owners scale their marketing. However, there was a fulfillment that I was missing. The fulfillment that I was missing was helping others, and me deciding to found what today is GrowRev and be able to make a difference not only in my business but in millions of other people that we get to touch through our companies.
I've got to give a shout out to GrowRev.
Rohan Sheth and everybody from GrowRev.
Rohan at GrowRev.
GrowRev.
Shout out to GrowRev.
Rohan, you're basically going hands-on with businesses, helping them convert into the digital age.
Rohan, you consult a lot of these successful companies. How are they now navigating through these challenging times?
It's never been easier for a small business to take their brand, take their service, take their product, and go online and share it with the masses.
Rohan, if people need your help, where can they find you?
GrowRev.com.
Digital marketing today can expedite that at a rate never seen before. And that's one of the reasons why I'm extremely passionate about it. It's more of a purpose-driven project for me able to help businesses scale their digital marketing so they don't go through the tough times that we've seen recently, where some of the biggest companies in the world are starting to shut down because they just didn't invest in themselves and their digital marketing. I was born in India, in a city called Baroda, which today is now called Vadodara, I'm pretty sure. Lived there for a very short amount of my life, eventually moved to Bombay, which is now called Mumbai. Lived there for the majority of my life. Grew up in a very fortunate environment, in an environment that was very supportive, borderline, upper class, I would suggest. Literally from the time I remember, I've never seen my mom work a day in her life. Maids, drivers, traveling in the nicest places I possibly can. The one experience that I will never forget, I was young, would have been somewhere between 3 to 5 years old in that world, and my family had just taken what was originally their travel agency that they'd built to now open an airline. The experience of taking delivery of the plane and going through all the rituals that the family wanted to go through to take the acceptance and delivery of the plane, walking onto the tarmac and just being on that first inaugural flight of what was our airline with just family and friends was one of the most insane experiences that I will forever remember. The two countries that I'd say we traveled the most to was Thailand and Dubai. Those are the two countries, and the UK. Dubai was essentially second home for me growing up, and then Thailand and the UK was kind of up there. The most distinct memory, people look at Dubai today as glitz, glamour. It's like Vegas, New York, Miami has a baby. It's Dubai. Like that's what people think of Dubai as today. But I grew up with Dubai known as beach, main road, which is Sheikh Zayed Road, a bunch of buildings and desert. Like that's essentially how I remember it from, when I was like 3 feet tall, pretty much. Whereas today it's looked at as, the biggest airport, the biggest building, the tallest building, the craziest this, the craziest that. That's one of the most crazy memories because I see the duality of it and I see how far they've come from where they were to where they are today. And that brings, for me to see in 31 years of what an evolution can happen and what the next 31 years of my life can bring. So when Emirates became the airline that it's known as today, my mom and myself got to fly on one of their very first inaugural Boeing 777 first class flights. And that was like the foundational launch to what is the Emirates Airlines today. Today we know it as they have the most amount of A380s. They're all over the world. Their first class is vlogged by every big YouTuber to share what you can get, the unlimited champagne, the caviar, the booze, blah, blah, blah. Well, where it all started and the entire essential backing of that entire airline one of the very first 777, which was their flagship plane at the time. First classes, my mom and myself had the experience to fly on. The very first flight. In one moment, everything changed for me. And the way I look at it, you know, if it was in any other situation looking back, or in any other perspective looking back, most people would look at it like it was the worst decision of their life. To me, in that moment, I looked at it, even leaving India and coming to Canada was one of the best decisions. One is because my parents did it for a better lifestyle. Yes, growing up in that kind of an environment in India is great. You know, you have a lot of money, you have a lot of, you know, influence, all that good stuff. But when you're living in a third world country, essentially, it comes with its drawbacks and benefits. There was, in the moment when my parents made the decision, there was a lot more drawbacks than there were benefits. That's why they gave that up to come here, to give us the opportunity we have today. The drawbacks of leaving India and coming to Canada was, you know, for me to watch my mom go back to work. I never see my mom work a day in her life till I was 12 years old. My dad essentially had to give up his entire company, go back to work, eventually go back to school so that he could get the business diploma and degree in the travel industry so that he could go back to opening his own company again. And then eventually get to a point where, you know, not realizing that the place that we were living in today is legitimately considered a lower socioeconomic part of town. I came from an environment where schooling was so different. Like, you want to talk about, you know, two different perspectives of school. I grew up in India where it was so academically focused, then coming to Canada where it's like academics is really not the big focus. Like in India, if you're not in the top like 98% of your class, you're essentially not considered a smart kid. Over here, it's like you do well, you do well, you don't do well, you don't do well. There's enough support. Like that's so polarizing is the word I was looking for. Coming from there, like I'm coming from an environment that you have to be smart, you have to be smart, you have to be smart 99%, 99%, 99%. To here is like, oh, go have fun at recess, go have fun at lunch, go have fun after school, let's do sports, let's do that. That was like less than 5% of my schooling growing up in India. So it's very different. Adapting that environment was very different. Looking back at it, I got about, I think it was like a month and a half because we came, end of April is when we moved here into Canada. And then June, essentially school ends. So I had like a month and a half of one grade, got a summer, and then went into a full year of elementary school. And that was when things really kind of showed me like, holy cow, things are different here. It was difficult earlier on. Making friends was very difficult because one, you're the outsider. Two, you've come from another country. Three, you sound different. Four, you don't understand what they're talking about half the time because the way these, like the you know, the lingo, as people say, is very different. So you're learning different things. You don't understand what they mean. Getting bullied, there's no doubt about that. I remember one instance. I moved to Canada. It was grade 6, going into grade 7, that like a month and a half, and it was my birthday. Like 3 weeks into school was my birthday. Now, essentially, I remember back in the day when how many years you're becoming, you'd get like birthday punches. That never fucking existed when I lived in India. You come to Canada and all of a sudden you're getting birthday punches. Like, what the hell does this even mean? And then I remember, like, obviously, you know, the kids had a good time, kind of taking advantage of it. And I look back and I laugh at it now. Whereas my mom looked at it and was like, oh my God, my kid's getting abused. It's cool. Now looking back at it, it's like, it was a funny situation. Like, it was the quickest way to learn. So my dream growing up, because I had a chance to be on planes a lot, was to be a pilot. And every single time I got on a plane, I'd always watch. Like, as a little kid, I remember like looking at the pilots getting on the plane first, kind of getting to sit at the front of the plane. Obviously, when my family owned the airline, getting to spend a lot of time in the cockpit then, like before, you know, all the terrorist situations happened with the travel world. You could literally just, if you were a young kid, you get asked to go meet the pilot. Like, there was a lot of that experience subconsciously adding up in my life. The journey eventually transitioned from the beginning of traveling to eventually moving to Canada to eventually being in Air Cadets for a while, which is where my original, you know, taste of flying on my own came to play. And then once I finished school, I was like, I've always wanted to be a pilot. Let's go fill that void. Signed up at a local flying school and just fully committed. Like, literally went from 0 to 100 into commitment, and I was like there 15 plus hours a day some days. I was like 3/4 of the way through the entire program and spent so much time, so many hours flying and educating and learning, and to eventually get a job offer saying, hey, you're almost done your commercial license, go get your twin engine license and come work for us. And I go, okay. Well, I knew the stair step ladder. Now, like the pilot career cycles really work is like, you could either get in when there's a lot of pilots or you can get in when there's not many pilots. And if you get in and you go to school when there's a lot of pilots, where I was, you're pretty much earning your way to being an airline pilot to fly the big planes. And that's like you're doing stuff that most people would want to do, like living up north in Canada, doing bush flying or doing winter flying, etc. But you're doing it because you have such a passion-filled purpose to fly. So I get offered to be bush pilot up north. I was like, okay, well, send me like a letter, like an offer, and what that would look like if I did finish this. They sent me a letter, and I look at this, and I'm sitting down, and I remember looking at this, and I was like, this has got to be a joke. I just spent almost, the time it would have been like just under 18 months. Got my privates, got my commercial certification, got everything. I'm literally about to start my twin engine training, and I get this offer. I'm like, I made more in high school bribing teachers working at McDonald's than I'm getting offered after spending almost $50,000. No, I already spent spending $50,000 in school, and then I've got to go suffer through like treacherous winters. I was like, nah, like not happening. It was one of the most difficult decisions of my life was to drop out of school, was to drop out of being a pilot, because I know how much it meant to my parents. I know how much it meant to my family, because they wanted to see me fulfill that dream that I had. But it got to a point where it was more of a passion than it was a purpose. I love flying, I like traveling, and that's kind of what I correlated to being a pilot. But then I realized that I like my lifestyle, and I like family, and I like my values that drive that more than just flying, and I could fulfill flying with some other part of my life. And I decided to drop out. I didn't end up telling my parents for a long time. Like it was like almost 2 or 3 months. They still thought I was going to school, and I wasn't. I went from really aggressively being in school to passively being in school, and it was literally around this time, summer, just flying for hours one day, flying around, and I'm coming in, and I'm coming back on because you can schedule the plane for so long. So the end of my scheduled point was coming through. I had to get the plane back, and I'm coming in, landing, beautiful sunny day, perfect day for flying, not a cloud in sight. Coming in for landing, talking to tower, and all of a sudden I look above me, and I'm like, that's a shadow. Like, there's not a friggin' cloud in sight. Why is there a shadow above me? I literally lean over, I look above, and there's this eagle, and it's like 6 feet minimum in length across my wing, and he's just sitting in my draft the whole time. And I was like, okay, this is gonna be fun. Been down this road before a couple of times, but eventually they just kind of screw off and leave you alone because they realize how big of a plane you are in comparison to how big they are. This guy was stubborn, to say the least, and he's cruising to my draft. Eventually got to a point, I'm like talking to tower, talking to International Tower, which is Vancouver Tower, and I'm like, I can't turn. I'm going downwind. I need to turn to base to go into final. And I'm like, I can't turn from downwind to base, because if I do, as soon as I lift my wing, I'm gonna smoke this eagle. Like, it's just going to happen. And as soon as I get to that point, I'm dealing with Vancouver Tower. They're getting pissed off at me because I'm crossing into international airspace, which you need clearances to do, and a whole bunch of other craziness. And then the airport that I was flying out of, which is Boundary Bay, they go, turn. You don't have a choice. Get out. Like, you gotta get out. I'm getting yelled at through. I turn, 1,000 feet above the ground. I slowly start to get altitude. Turn. Exactly what I knew what's gonna happen. Smoke the eagle. One entire side of my wing's gone. Now, physics says if your wing's gone, you have no airflow. But thank God, because I was flying a plane, which is a Cessna 172, above, I still had one entire side of the wing. With the cliche term of fight or flight comes into play, and as soon as I turn the plane, wing's gone, and I put the plane instantly into what's called a slip. So pretty much a one-sided wing, and your tail's the other way, and you're just kind of like gliding, essentially, or skidding. Like if you think of a car, like you're going sideways, but you're going the opposite way, is what it essentially would look like. It's called a slip. Put the plane into a slip, and I'm like, all I could see is the runway. And I was like, if I can get this plane to hit the ground, I don't care how it hits the ground, that's all I need to do, just hit the ground. Don't hit the trees, don't hit anything else. And that's all my goal was. It was fight or flight, and eventually, somehow, some way, got this plane down. It literally was the most blanked out 30 seconds to a minute of my life where I don't remember anything. And as soon as that happens, get the plane down, I literally don't even I just slammed the plane down. Like, I didn't even care, I just slammed the plane down. I remember my entire body going into a state of shock. Now, plane's landed, I need to still taxi the plane. Most people don't realize you still need your feet, because to control the plane is you control it with your feet. You only control it with the yoke when you're in the air. I'm shaking, like fully shaking, trying to get this plane back because I'm in such shock. Get back, and I didn't know what to do. Tower knew that I hit the bird, but nobody on the ground knew that I hit the bird. I literally got out of the plane, grabbed my stuff, get my car, and leave. Don't talk to anybody, just leave. And at that point in time, driving home, I knew that was it for me. Being a careered pilot was never going to happen. I do love flying, but I get to fly a lot now for other reasons. You know, going into my what is called career now, it's a good transition because I did a bit of unique entrepreneurial journeys, and we can come to that in a second. And then I started working at McDonald's. And then when I started working at McDonald's, I realized in grade 12 that I could work full-time at night, or I could work full-time at night and during the day and kind of work shift work. But then I was like, okay, how do I balance this with school and making sure that I can also pass and graduate? And eventually I figured out that, you know, all I really needed, I knew what electives I needed, and I knew what academic courses I needed. So I took my English that I needed, and then the rest was like, what else do I need to get just enough of the credits to graduate? And in that semester, I figured out that my teacher really liked McDonald's. Well, guess who worked at McDonald's? This guy. Guess who had the opportunity to work full-time at McDonald's? This guy. So essentially I was like, okay, well, there's 2 days a week that I got to work during the day, and that was my agreement with McDonald's, and that was literally middle of the week, and then there's the rest of the time I had to work at night. So I went to my teacher and I said, what's it going to cost me to not come to class and go to McDonald's and work, and literally from here and I get my projects done? Eventually I figured out he really liked Smartie McFlurries. So I just started bringing him Smartie McFlurries. And eventually that transitioned into bringing him meals once a week, to eventually bringing him Smartie McFlurries once a week, to then eventually realizing that he stopped marking me away. And I got the credits that I needed. And all it figured out was, what's his pain point? How can I fulfill that pain point? Done. To eventually realize the days that I would bring him the meals was the days that he was responsible for taking dinners home for his kids, because his wife away not being able to fill the meals for his kids. And eventually, talk about marketing and sales 101, like, I didn't realize from a subconscious aspect, it's like I needed something, he needed something, I could fulfill that, we both won. I graduated high school. So essentially it was sales and marketing. Now, I knew I was good at sales, but it was just like one of those things that I just kind of learned. Eventually my parents figured it out, and they're like, you need to figure something out and go do something with your life. I was bartending in the interim, but I was like, I need to do something with my life. And I just applied for every single sales job on Craigslist at the time. Literally every single one, didn't care. I was like, corporate sales, 6-figure salaries to no experience sales. Like, I was like, someone's gotta call me. Like, at the end of the day, someone's gotta be like, okay, let's give this goof a chance. And they did it, and that was a door-to-door sales company. They gave me a chance, which was an interesting situation, because you get called for your first interview, they like you, come back for your second interview. The second interview is an on-the-job interview, which essentially means you get in a car with a bunch of strangers, drive an hour out of town, and oh yeah, now you're doing door-to-door. And you're like, what the actual fuck did I just get myself into? I do it, and eventually realize, go from transitioning from that mindset of school to doing door-to-door sales, accept the job, get the job opportunity. 3 weeks into it, I almost get fired because I hadn't got a sale yet, because it's such a different mentality, and that lit a fire under my ass. 3 weeks later, I saved myself, from that point on, got a sale, bought myself some time. 3 weeks later, I was in the top producing, in the office, eventually be one of the top producing sales guys for the company for just under 2.5 years. I think it was just one of those moments of like realizing where, one, I had a fire in my ass, that if I knew if I got fired from this door-to-door job, I just spent 3.5 weeks knocking 120 doors a day. So I'm just like, well, I don't want to let that go to waste. I got to make some ROI on the back end of it. Like, imagine like just 8 hours a day knocking 120 doors. That's a lot of steps. Like, I need some income for that. That was one. 2 was like to prove myself that I could do it, and 3 was like I'm not going back home to tell my parents I fucking failed at something else. Like that was essentially the mindset, and then eventually became, you know, one of the top producing sales guys in the company. So I went from direct sales to direct response marketing, and direct sales career went all the way through from doing door to door for, like I said, just under 2.5 years. Eventually left that. I had an opportunity to sell meat for a company, which is an interesting sales experience. And then eventually I got poached by a big direct sales organization to sell in-home educational software, similar to tutoring programs like Kumon or Sylvan Learning. That was one of the best sales experience of my entire life. And the reason why I say that was we were called educational consultants, the people that were going in to sell these tutoring packages. We'd have a sales team from India calling to qualify these leads, to eventually give it to an outbound call center team here in Canada to then book appointments for us. So now they've been harassed for, call it 3 to 6 months, essentially, a family. And eventually we get showed up and you knock on the door, ring the doorbell, whatever. It's like, hey, I'm here from the company to help you, and you know, for as an education consultant to grade your kids to see how well they're doing. And it was like, I'd say 7 out of 10 times the families would open the door and the door would they would just be pissed because all they wanted to say yes for is just they thought we would leave them alone if we came. Like that's it. So essentially we would go to the family and they would just be like, we just literally had you guys booked an appointment to come here so you guys would leave us alone. And I go, totally understand, and I understand if you want me to leave right now. However, I'm not here for you, I'm here for your kid. And if you want me to see if I can help your kid and give you guys to show whether they're on the track for school or not, that's all I'm here to do. Instantly, any family that went from absolutely pissed off, wanted nothing to do with us, would instantly turn around, drop their ego, drop their pissed off, and be like, come on in, we want to see how we can help our kid. Learning how to like control environments like that and going through the entire sales pitch after that, dealing with all of that. It's like that career that I had there doing the in-home selling. And I was not selling a small package. This was like anywhere from $6,500 all the way up to $13,500. And I was doing this within 90 to 120 minutes. Taught me so much about sales, so much about human psychology, and so much about understanding how to sell a person that eventually I got really, really good. And I was always in the top 3 of the company that I started to ask our team to give me the worst leads because I literally wanted like lower socioeconomic people that just like were harassed for 1.5 to 2 years before someone would get in. Like I just wanted the worst just to see how far I could push the boundary. And then I just got to a point where I just got bored and I needed to figure out another career path, and that was for me going from, because I'd mastered the art of one-to-one selling, and now I knew the next was how do I figure out how to sell one to many. The very first entrepreneurial experience that I ever had was selling pocket bikes in high school. And pocket bikes are these little crotch rocket things. Like I remember I had the most iconic gold water pocket bike. I had one that I bought off of Craigslist. I was working at McDonald's at the time, had enough money. I was like literally wanting, just as a young, dumb 15, 16-year-old kid wanting to buy stupid things, right? So I was like, hey, what can I buy? And it was like spring, summer weather essentially again. And I wanted to buy something and have fun for the summer. And I found these pocket bikes. And I bought one, bring it to my friends. My friends are loving it. How can I get one? Well, in my head, I'm thinking, well, I can go get it from them and sell it to him, which I did like 3 or 4 originally, like just, you know, and then be the middle guy in the middle. And then eventually more and more people started to figure out like there's these pocket bikes going around. They're like, who the hell has these pocket bikes? We want them. Eventually my name comes around. Like, how do we get them? I said, okay, well, give me a little bit. Let me see if I can get you some more. I did, and I got a container full. And it was probably the best decision and the worst decision, but almost cost me my school, like me going to school, because I almost got expelled. But it was a career that I understood demand creation and demand fulfillment. 2 of the things that we focus very, very heavily on in any of the companies that I'm involved in today. Demand creation came from marketing and attention, and demand fulfillment was making sure that I could deliver these pocket bikes and give them to the kids. Now, I didn't understand marketing, I didn't understand sales, I just knew one thing. If I had enough attention, people would buy. That's all I knew. So what did I do? Every single day in grade 11, grade 10, grade 11, I would leave 20, 30 minutes before end of school and go home, grab my pocket bike, come back to school and start ripping around in the parking lot. like just ripping around. So as soon as the bell rang and all the kids were out of school, I just rip around the parking lot. Parents were there, kids were there, and I'm just ripping around. And eventually people come up, want to talk to me, where can I get one from? Oh, I can sell you one. Where can I get one from? Oh, I can sell you one. And it just created so much attention. Eventually the teachers got pissed off, the people in school got pissed off, because these things were loud, obnoxious little crotch rockets. And like I said, almost got me in trouble, but eventually I ended up selling out an entire container. There was a lot behind trying to get this container out, because this was right in the midst of a trucking strike at the time. And I remember working at McDonald's and having to bribe a McDonald's truck driver to go into the yard, because McDonald's was the only company allowed to go in and get their containers off. And he had to go in as a McDonald's driver to get this container off of the yard, the trucking yard, because no other truck drivers were allowed off to get them off. There's a whole story behind that one on how to get that. It was insane. But yeah, eventually got them out and then sold every single one of the pocket bikes that I bought. It was an entire container full of bikes. It was north of 100 grand. I look at my life a little bit like a friggin' roller coaster. Grew up in a lifestyle, as you guys have seen up here, eventually come back down, build myself back up through sales career, and then I decided, hey, I'm at my top, making good money. But this is before internet money. Like this is before the internet, like anybody knew what building an online business was. At 21, 22, essentially that time, I decided to give it up. And I started to realize I needed to study one-to-many marketing. So I started grabbing books from Jay Abraham, who's now a really close friend of mine, Dan Kennedy, Joe Sugarman, Gary Halbert, just understanding marketing, direct response, copywriting, and started studying that. I eventually got into affiliate marketing. One of the things about my personality is I'm all or none, and it's got its really good benefits and it's got its drawbacks. And the drawbacks of that is I went from making a six-figure yearly income, a high six-figure yearly income in sales, to nothing. Like legitimately, I literally walked in, said, I'm not coming back to work again. I'm gonna go focus on understanding marketing. Everybody thought it was the biggest mistake of my life. Parents once again told me I'm a fucking idiot essentially for doing that, but it was just like, I always like to, like it was in a situation where like, put my back up against the wall and just make a decision that I knew I had to make. Start studying, do affiliate marketing, spend 2.5 years, almost 3 years just studying digital marketing, understanding what it's like, understanding marketing, making pretty much nothing. Like to a point where there was a time where I was going through a drive-thru to buy a coffee and my debit card had insufficient funds on it. Like that's the correlation of like all or none. And I realized at that point in time where I couldn't afford a $1.67 coffee at Tim Hortons or A&W or something at the time. I just remember it was just such a fucked up moment in my life where I was like, I could literally go to a nightclub and buy bottles at fucking 19. I'm mostly going to buy drinks, and now I can't buy coffee. Like I couldn't correlate that in my head, but it was like, that was my personality. And that was a moment where I realized like I really need to figure my shit out, and then transition started to, it was like I'm trying to do affiliate marketing. I was making enough money, but to correlate lifestyle along with that was just so difficult. Got myself in debt because I went from a six-figure income and everything else, and like I still had bills, all this stuff. Eventually I realized, okay, it's great and everything, I'm making good money and it's scalable, but I missed the one-to-one aspect. So I was like, how can I do one-to-one, but essentially add a one-to-many component to it? And that's when I started to build the agency. I started going back to what I knew best, was door knocking. So I went door to door, selling businesses, digital marketing. When I built the agency, and I was doing it myself earlier on, doing from everything from demand creation to demand fulfillment. So selling the deal, door knocking, creating the lead, selling the lead, doing the work, communicating with the client, like literally everything that involves in building an agency. Eventually got to a point where I was doing pretty well by myself, but you can only run by a single person so far because you cap your income because your production can only go so far because the income that you have is, or the hours you have in the day to create the income is only so much. It got to a point where I knew I needed to bring on someone to help on the fulfillment side because I could create enough demand. And I was in the midst of either hiring a media buyer or building myself or partnering with someone. And fortunately, it ended up happening to be that someone that I met when I was doing door-to-door sales, like almost a decade before, essentially, just shy of a decade before, was also in marketing, transitioned his entire career to get into marketing, and he was on the media buying side, and that's when I met Matt again, and he reached out, he's like, yo, what the hell are you doing in digital marketing? I'm like, why? And he goes, well, I'm in digital marketing, and I'm like, what the hell are you doing in digital marketing? And we jumped on a call and a Skype, and it was literally like, you want to do this? And I explained him the story, like the story of the situation, and I knew his skill set was the perfect match to what I needed, essentially, because he enjoyed the analytics, he enjoyed that part, and I just, since even before when marketing, I knew that. And I was like, I'll go sell, you fulfill. Cool, let's do it. And that literally was the beginning of that entire moment. And he literally tells the story every single time a client asks, and it's like the next day I was like, yo man, I got a client. Like literally, that's what it was. There was no legal paperwork, there was nothing. I'm pretty sure we didn't have legal paperwork for like 5 years until we were working together. Like just handshake deal, let's do this. Like that's how much trust we had in the entire business together. One of the biggest clients that I had at the time, and that Matt and I landed because we committed to this thing. I used to do these things when in sales where it's like I'd go like, and I still do it today, work extremely hard for 90 days and then take a week off, and then work extremely hard for 90 days and then take a week off. Because you can commit to anything for 90 days. If you just go all out, all in, especially from a career standpoint, go hard for 90 days. And I said, all right, Matt, for the next 90 days, we're just gonna give it our all. I'm gonna do everything I can from door to door to LinkedIn to outreach to everything. Like 90 days, you just focus on, like, as soon as the fulfillment starts, your 90 days starts at that point in time. It says, okay. When the first 7 days of doing that, one of the leads that we got was someone from the movie The Secret. Well, funny enough, back when I left school earlier on the video and dropped college and went into door-to-door sales, the movie The Secret, and I just read the book Think and Grow Rich. And I remember just watching this movie and realizing, saying, it'd be cool one day to work with these people. Well, Matt and I partnered together. One of the very first leads is someone from the movie The Secret to run their paid ads. So GrowRev as a brand had just been purchased. We were transitioning away from my personal brand, which is called Rohan Chef Consulting, and transitioning it into a company brand. And in that moment, we were growing so quickly, but it was one of two things. Remember, earlier in the video, I talked about demand creation and demand fulfillment. Now, when you get to a point where there's too much creation and not enough fulfillment, you end up burning your fucking entire company because you just stress test your entire company. And we got to a point where we grew so fast in the wrong niche that we really did not want to focus, because I would sell anybody and anything, and my business partner at the time and still today would just be like, just go get sales. That's all your job is. We'll figure out development. But I was selling way quicker than we could fulfill, and that caused a domino effect of going from 6 figures a month in income to less than $20,000 a month in income in 3 weeks, because we pissed off so many people that it was just one of the most stressful, anxiety-driven, sleepless nights I've ever had in my entire career. So it was looking back at it, it was like one of the last family trips that I ever did with my entire family. I kind of started to see pieces when I was there, but I was so at a point where I was like, I haven't done a family trip in so long that I wanted to be unplugged. But I'm starting to see these pieces in my email, my messenger, but I'm like, no, I promised my family I'm just gonna be unplugged. So I'm trying to be unplugged. So I'm like, in my head, I'm like, just enjoy your time. But in the back of my head, I was like, this doesn't make sense. Come back home to realize that we were still selling deals that had been closed. I went on the trip, came back, dealt with all of that. The fulfillment start just completely, there was a piece where I think we just sold too quickly, the wrong deals. And it's, the way I look at it, it's not a one person's fault or somebody else's fault. It's, if you sell the wrong person, and eventually, we as a company made a decision to sell whoever, but it was also a stress test in the moment to realize who we did not want to work with. And it literally caused so much stress at the time that, like I said, it took the company from 6 figures in income to less than $20,000 a month in 3 weeks from the time I got back that trip to start to see the pieces of this thing just unfold. And when it just unraveled, it was like, what the fuck am I going to do? This is happening, and I have nothing I can do to stop it. We just tried to fight the fires and kind of essentially deal with it all. It was so many issues happening at one time that it was like every day was something different, and it was like, when is this going to end? Right? And then eventually just it went from like an avalanche where it just started coming down and then eventually just stopped. But then when it stopped, you're like at the bottom, you're like looking back at where you were and you're like, what the fuck just happened? Since that, in 2018, My entire life has gone 180. From what I looked down upon, put myself in a pit, beating myself up every single day for going through the issues that we went through. I look back at it today, nothing but grateful, thankful, and absolutely mind blown of what you can achieve when your back's up against the wall. I'm recording this right now in Q1 of 2021. At the time, we was a team of 3. Today, we're a team of 22 worldwide. Not only have we gone from being able to work with clients we never want, some of the clients that we work with today are dream clients. Some of the names that you may recognize currently that we work with, Mastermind.com, that includes Dean Graziosi and Tony Robbins, ClickFunnels, Russell Brunson. If you're watching this from Australia, Knowledge Source was one that we got right after that. Not only has my life turned around 180 in 2018, when we went back into a full focus of building a true foundation of a company that can build and be here for a legacy. 2019, I'd probably traveled the most in my entire life, taking the time to invest into not only my personal side, but also my business side. My wife and I have also had a baby at the beginning of 2020, and right after that, the world completely shut down. I did one thing, and that was put on my big boy pants and help the clients that trusted in us. Coming out of that, not being able to travel, being stuck in quarantine, and trying to raise with my wife a newborn child, one of the biggest fulfillments that I can ever have for the last year has been that we were able to double our client success, in turn, double our company revenue. Just because you build something and you lose it all, you cannot build it again. But guess what? You can build it twice as fast, twice as big, and twice as powerful. Some of the people that obviously I gotta be extremely grateful for in my life during that point in time are the people that were extremely close to me, including my wife, my family, and especially my brother, who I just brought on to the company. During the times of difficulty, I remember having conversations with my wife and telling her, hey, we've got to go back into rebuild mode and kind of take this company and run with it from the ground up. And I said, literally remember telling her, like, I need a few months of just non-distractive work where I can focus, and she was nothing but completely bought in to the entire scenario. Being able to do that, I was able to give her one of the best 30th birthdays that I know she could have ever asked for. I would like to invite each and every single one of you to join me on this journey. The highs and lows, the fun things that we do, the difficult decisions that we make on a daily basis. My name is Rohan Sheth. Welcome to my life.